Well, welcome to our Sunday Night Live Facebook time that we have here with Tami and Doss. I'm here with them, and we did 5 video shoots on 4 different topics a couple of weeks ago, and then we just wanted to have some time that we had together here where it's question and answers on those. If you didn't get to watch them, you'll be okay, but we're going to cover those 4 topics and kind of have your questions and answers come in each of those segments. So now that you parents have had some time to actually kind of experience a couple of weeks of teaching here, I'm sure there's some questions you've hopefully written down or that you just write here in the posts below the Facebook page, and I'll be watching those and asking them the questions. What I want to say is Tammy's going to kind of field the questions mainly that has to do with the K through 5th grade. And then Doss is going to be checking on those 6th through 12th grade questions. So if you have specific to those age groups, put Tammy question, Doss question. If it's just general, just kind of leave it as it is. But they're kind of the experts here, and they have had time teaching 13 plus years. They're laughing about that, but they are. I consider them the experts. And Tammy, you've been teaching K through 5th grade, Doss 7th through 12th grades in the public school system. And then you also have a couple of elementary kids yourselves, and you have those teaching duties that's full-time, online, and now in person as well. You did that back in the spring and now here in the fall. So you, in my opinion, you're experts from that, all of that. So, and you'll be the first to say you learned a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're always learning a lot.
Yes,
I think that's
always.
the life of a teacher.
But, you know, in
And a
the
parent.
spring and this fall, all of that with the online, you've learned a lot. So the 4 topics I want to kind of cover here at the beginning so you can kind of decide where your questions fit. So the first topic was how to manage schedules that are developmentally appropriate for the different age ranges. And so we'll take questions on that first one. The second one is how to set up routines and procedures. So kind of thinking through those questions. The third is how to be a coach for your children during this time. And then fourthly, what productive struggle means and why it's good. If you watch those videos, you're fairly acquainted with those and know. Okay, let's take this first topic. And managing schedules that are developmentally appropriate for different age ranges. I'll be kind of watching for questions, but we have some questions that already came to us from some parents. So the first one is, what does it look like to check my students' work? As a parent, they're trying to figure out, you know, how to be that coach person, as we talked about. But it's checking the students' work, and maybe this whole check-in idea and how that can, how your thoughts on checking in with your kids can work.
Yeah. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you start for your age group,
Okay.
and then I'll kind of go up and take it from where you leave off.
Yeah, so when I think, right now I'm a K-1 teacher, so when I think checking my students' work, even right now, like just helping them make sure that they actually accomplished each task that day. So whether it's a live Zoom session or whether, like, did you make it today? Or did we set a timer to make sure you made it? I think our daughter's missed the beginning of some of her specialists. So we've had to work on that.
I'm sure you're in great company, so.
It's like, oh no, we forgot to get you on. But even just helping them manage, like, what are the times? How do we set a timer to help us remember? Because I'm sure that, we're not the only working parents out there. And I would say, and even for my son, who's a 4th grader, checking work right now for us looks like, did you read the instructions?
Oh, right.
And did you click the links that they provided for you? And did you click the submit button? As far as checking work, the rest of that I would say is up to the teacher for them to read through, because they have certain expectations about what that looks like. And at that point, we choose to leave that in the teacher's hands of, you know what you're expecting, you know what that looks like. And we made sure that the instructions were read through. We made sure the boxes were filled. We don't go through and like double check unless that's a part of the work.
Right.
We don't double check if it was all correct or anything. We just are like, did you fill in the boxes? And does your teacher actually have something to look at? And if so, that's really how we check the work, I would say, at this point for our elementary kids.
At least for elementary,
yeah.
Definitely.
Actually, if you might go into the timer idea, I think that this is actually going to hit a lot of the questions that we got ahead of time is setting timers for different things.
Yeah.
So that's one, but just talk about the timer and how that can be helpful in the school work and managing the schedules and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think one of the things to kind of look at it's kind of in 2 points. One of it's kind of the big timer concept of, have you set up what your schedule is going to look like for the day or for the week? Do you know when your appointments actually are? For me, I set alarms for everything.
On your phone. It's always buzzing.
It's always on my phone. I mean, I've got the little wrist thing here that rumbles every time I'm supposed to be doing something, so I can look at it.
And a lot of junior high school kids have that option with phones because a lot of them have that already going.
Or a lot of the systems at the schools actually tie in with the calendar system. So with a little bit of effort, they can go ahead and have their personal calendars actually updated with what the school calendars are doing.
Okay.
So that's from a
that's
bride
like the
piece
big
of actually,
timer
from actually
concept.
showing up and doing that is kind of the big concept of doing that.
And then the other timer I would say that we utilize for our own personal children is like if they're not into work, like after lunch they get really tired and they want to just kind of hang out. And that's always a struggle, by the way, in school.
Yeah.
The after lunch is always the hardest because they've already put a lot of work in the morning in the second half. So one of the things that we do with our own personal children, with my younger, it's just, here's a 10-minute timer. You need to work for 10 minutes, and then you can have a break. And even just teaching them how to do that, either on the microwave clock or we have an Alexa that they do that with.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Or my son, it's sometimes with him because he's kind of getting to that older stage of what's your learning plan? Are you working for 10 minutes and taking a 5-minute break, giving that, almost allowing that choice, but also helping guide it? Because he tried to do like a 5-minute work, 10-minute break, and we were like, nope, that doesn't work. So let's try again.
Let's go again.
And then I know in high school you would recommend some.
The recommendation is usually about 20 minutes is the time frame where you start kind of getting. You're not able to pay as much attention as you probably should to a topic. So one of the techniques is called a Pomodoro Technique. And if you look at it, it's also referred to as the tomato technique because that's what Pomodoro means. It's based off of the little tomato timer that the actual person who set it up used for studying. But it's 25 minutes on and then a 5-minute break. And during that 25 minutes, all distractions are off. All the focus is on the topic, and there's different apps on your computer that you can use to basically block off every website and every other distraction that's going to come on. And those are just a little bit of research for some plugins with that. But when you're doing it, it's 25 minutes of full focus, and then get away from the computer for the other time. Don't use that as sitting in the same place, looking at the same screen that you're just doing work on. But one of the things I really encourage the students to do, and I try to do myself, is I go out and I walk my dog for that short period of time, or I go and I try to check on my family, something that totally breaks you away from that piece. And a lot of times I find that when I come back, that makes me even more willing to focus on the material that's coming up, and I feel like the day hasn't just slogged on, but rather I've done something. Yeah. Along with that, I'd really say it kind of comes to the checkoff list of having a concrete goal at the end of this 25 minutes, I would have written 100 words, or I would have solved this many problems, or I would have done this project piece that the teacher had asked me to do. And by having a goal by the end of that, it goes ahead and motivates you to go ahead and complete it within that time frame.
Within that time.
And I think of that, like from a teacher's perspective, like we know that the younger kids also have a hard time sitting for very long. I mean, in kindergarten, I would say every 5 minutes, you want to change, even just if you're standing or sitting. Like it's just, you need something that changes, and those little changes, or even if they all need to be celebrated. If a kid can do 1 minute, great. Like let's try 2 next time. Let's celebrate that. Like great, can you do the next one? And I think as a parent, we aren't very good at cajoling our kids like we are as teachers.
No.
In fact, I myself yelled at my daughter this week for not getting something done.
Way to be honest.
I yelled at her and she's a first grader, so, great mom moment, by the way. But yelled at her for not doing her writing when it's the first time I caught it all week. It was Thursday. But also realizing I'm talking to my daughter right now in a way I would never talk to a student who was in front of me. And I think even as parents, us shifting that hat of how would I speak to a student right now or someone else's kid, even if you can put that in your mind of okay. And we got to a point where we at least were able to laugh about it at that point. We're joking about different things. And and even just saying, okay, like, can you do this much? Can you do this much? Good job. Celebrate those little things, and we'll come back to this later.
And it's measuring those and seeing how they're doing in those.
Yeah.
So how many out there have yelled at their children? So you got a lot of hands, I'm sure, that it's me too. So yeah.
This week.
So you know, we're all in company together on. There's just times where it's frustrating, and that part of the questions that we've had here had to do with those hats. Like, I'm the teacher or I'm the parent. What are some tips that they can have that will kind of help without actually doing a hat, where you kind of
hats.
shift between the mom dad hat
Yeah.
and the coach hat actually is the other hat. So what are some things they can do to kind of change those hats and the kids see that somehow?
I don't know. I think for us, it's very much, at least for me, it's kind of, I subscribe to a lot of the coaching kind of feel. And that's kind of the difference.
As
I
a
think,
parent,
as a parent.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a long time.
And that's kind of part of our culture, our family culture. But with going that, I think a lot of it is kind of having that separation of, once again, when it's time to do something, it's like, okay, we have a schedule. At 8 o'clock, everybody is out of their pajamas. They had ideally eaten breakfast,
Brush
so ready to go and brush their teeth. It's kind of that another checklist of chores that they need to do.
Chores, yeah.
And then it's that transition to, we are all meeting up, and I'm going off to my office out in the garage to get to start my projects. Tammy's doing her work. The kids are setting up their own individual stuff and marking that off. And then during lunch and, you know, even afterwards when it's supposed
Those
to be
are
done.
like family time.
We have family time. So we try to very intentionally go for and have activities that provide a break between, you know, the work time and the family time, such as our big thing is for going for a walk. We've got a half-mile walk down to the end of the road and another half-mile back, which is how half and half works. But we just go down there, and that's kind of our family break of talking and starting a new section of the day.
Or playing magic.
Or playing.
Yeah.
My first grade daughter, she likes to play magic.
Not
when
the
we're
card
on
game.
walks. No, like playing magic.
I was really excited there for a second.
I know. I think for me, it also, at the beginning of the pandemic shutdown,
Right.
we had to sit down with the kids because they were getting really upset that we weren't paying attention to them, that we weren't playing with them because we were home together. And we had to, thankfully, our kids have actually gone to school with me. So they've experienced being
okay.
where I'm working, and they also come in as students. We're coming in as students. But just talking about, like, when you had a question, you didn't come find me at school to ask that question, and the same thing goes now. So like, when you are at school, this is still school, and I have work, and even just getting them to recognize, like, this work is important. The other thing, too, is we have the 3 Bs in our house, and I also use them as an elementary because it's a pretty, like, funny way of talking about it, is if I'm working, and in class that's something different, but at home is if I'm in the middle of my actual job, or I'm working with students, or I'm developing curriculum for what's going to go home. The only reason you can interrupt me at that point is if you're bleeding, burning, or barfing.
Burning or barfing.
Yep, and so that's my coach
Or bathroom.
Bathroom they can take care of on their own, thankfully.
Oh, okay,
In the
all right.
classroom,
It works, though. It's a
bathroom
B.
works, yeah. In the classroom, bathroom was potentially
right.
an emergency, especially with K1.
Okay.
But that was this is my job. These are the only reasons you can interrupt me. And then after 30 minutes, we try really hard, 30 to 45 minutes of time, to take that break as a parent.
Take the break.
Go
right.
check on our kids, which, by the way, means we're on all day, no matter what, without a break.
Yeah.
Which is very different than when we're at work.
Right.
And
My
we
break
get
between
it.
classes,
It's so
it's
tiring.
taking care of stuff, and here it's like running off into the other room to check on everybody, make
Yeah.
sure. I left
Yep.
my mic on one time, and my entire classroom got to listen to me explain to my daughter how triangles work. So,
Oh,
So that
okay.
was fun.
Well,
Yeah.
at least they were learning. It could have been a whole
Yeah.
different thing if you went to the other B bathroom. So I'm glad we can be fun together here tonight. So here, there's a couple of questions about independence. So in your videos, you talked about helping your children to become a bit more independent, and ways to become more independent instead of dependent on you, too
Right.
dependent, or too dependent also maybe on the teacher, that there's an independence. So what are some ways, this is the question, what are some ways we can teach more independence for K through 5th, for 6th through 12th graders?
Why don't you start with that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a balancing act, because a lot of times I find that parents are very surprised what their students can do once they
Oh.
give them the opportunity to do it.
Right.
At the same time, you need to check in on that. I mean, we've worked really hard for our
Yeah.
children to be able to be independent that way.
I mean, humans slack
Right.
off when they can.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter who you are.
But at the same time, sometimes it's almost too much independence when my son makes an entire breakfast in the morning for him and his sister, and the entire kitchen is trashed. But it's one of those things of, that's part of giving that independence and accepting that fact that mistakes are going to be made.
Right.
So looking into for a bigger thing, I think it's this piece of providing a scaffolding. That's another teacher term. But providing the support so they know how to get to a point, and then watching them do that. But as soon as it's a point where they're not successful, you've provided that system where you can notice when they're not being successful. So for a kid, I wouldn't say, almost of any age, until they probably get to a junior or senior, I would look at them and go, well, you have a 5-page report done. All right, show me the 5-page report when you're done. Rather, it's one of those things of, okay, so let's talk about, depending on the age group, what's a draft? Show me that you've been working on this draft, or show me that you've done your outline, or show me your first revision, and then show me this. So it's kind of that, generally, how much freedom do you give before you check in on what they're doing? And unfortunately, that really comes from a variety of different skill levels for what the student has and what you've kind of set up as a parent.
Yeah, well, this ties into also one of the questions in a later, one of the later topics,
tie
but we'll
together,
pull it in
like
here
life, right?
because, so what are the signs when you've maybe pushed too hard, or there's obvious signs maybe if you haven't, because they're getting behind and things like that. But what are some of the signs if you've kind of pushed too hard and trying to see those signs? I think that's what this parent is kind of trying to see. Oh, I kind of went too far. This is, I should have noticed this earlier. What are your thoughts on that
That's
one?
a good question. If I'm thinking about it from a coach's perspective, if I know I've pushed too hard, like they're not able to be successful. Like they just flat out can't.
If they start crying, maybe?
That's not always a good indicator actually, because some
All right.
kids cry a lot.
And
Like I would say
parents
our
do,
daughter
too.
tends to cry more than
Yeah,
the
she knows what
average
she's
kid.
feeling.
She knows.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
manipulation.
She knows what the tears can do.
And you know
Yeah.
and that's something where you definitely know your own kid. You know if they tend to cry at a drop of a hat or if they haven't.
All right.
But if they literally can't, even if you're pushing them, like I kind of go on the try of threes.
Okay.
Like try something 3 times. So
3 times,
if I'm
okay.
talking about media and I'm talking about trying to teach, because I've taught kindergartners for 3 years now how to log in by themselves at school, which by the way is cool. I get really sweaty when I do that because there's like 20 of them and you're running around and you're like, oh my goodness, can they do this? But you say try 3 times.
3
And
times.
what that could mean is they literally are typing it in 3 times and they did something wrong. Or they and they did something wrong and after 3 times, and if they get used to that, kind of like the big deep belly breaths
can't
or
get it up.
things like that aren't working, then you go in and you can say, okay, I'm going to show you where the things are.
Right.
And so, and I would say even as a parent, we've kind of done that. I don't know, as
Right.
parents and teachers, our poor kids never get away from like learning life experiences.
Well, that's what we're all doing, right?
yeah.
It's a bit that. Yeah.
But I would say try 3 times, and then I would, as a teacher, or sometimes I have a mentor student, which of course we don't have at home the same way, but maybe a brother or sister, depending on the age
Right.
range and relationship. Then it's like then they can go in and they can type it in for them. But every day they're trying, and the next time it's just okay. Tomorrow's a new day. We're going to try
New
again,
day.
or this
Let's
next
do it
time
again.
is the next time we're going to try again. And if they ever are able to do it before the 3rd try, then you say, good job, and you celebrate that. You did that. You recognize, like, those little celebrations, like, bring students a world of joy,
Right.
and I know they bring our kids a world of joy.
Right.
I think as a parent, I do not as good of a job celebrating with them. I'm like, okay, next thing. As a teacher, I'm
Right.
way better and way nicer
And yeah, and I,
about celebrating. So
to
it's
add to
something
that,
to
I think
work
a
on.
lot of times the elementary level is probably a little bit easier, but a lot of times going through it when they get older, a lot of times it's a question of where is it that they're having the problem doing it?
Oh,
and
trying
as
to
a
identify the spot.
Yeah, and as
Yeah.
a teacher, it turns into being almost like a detective work,
Mm-hmm.
where
It's kind
saying,
of
okay, is it because you don't want to do it? Is it because you're ashamed that you weren't paying attention and you forgot what it's doing, what you were supposed to be doing? Or you're just having a really bad day and suddenly your brain is totally empty and you can't think of anything?
Mm-hmm.
So really, honestly, having conversations with the students
Mm-hmm.
really helps, and kind of learning those guiding questions as you're going along. and kind of identifying the best way of what do we need to do right now in order to get you to the point where you can start going ahead and doing what you need to do.
So how's your detective skills? That really is a piece of it. Really being able to identify. It's that compassion or empathy thing too. Trying to find out where they're at and where they're stuck. What are those scaffolding pieces they're going to need?
I think my favorite / least favorite answer as a teacher is IDK. I don't know.
IDK,
or it's like, I don't get it. And it's like, okay, so let's back up here. And even as a parent, I think this would be a really good skill is like, so you don't get it. So does that mean to make some kids laugh? It's like, so you're telling me you can't read this? Like, no, I can read this. This is more like 5th grade level, you know. What I would say is like, okay, so you can read it. So now let's go through, like, are you not getting it because this word doesn't make sense? Are you not getting it because you feel like you didn't get the right answer? Are you not getting it because of this?
Right.
But
there's that investigative work you do.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a strategy that we do with my programming classes where it's the phrase of "talk to the duck," and it's an old program. Well, it's a programming
Did you get
story.
that? Talk to the duck.
But it's basically this idea that you have a rubber duck and you explain the programming problem to the rubber duck. And the concept is if you're able to break it down in a simple enough term and actually verbalize it to a rubber duck, then a lot of times you actually find the answer yourself, or you realize where you're stuck. And it's getting that conversation working and that conversation going, which is a really important skill for the students to start thinking as far as kind of a metacognition kind of concept.
yeah. Stuck with the duck.
I stick with the duck.
Stuck with the duck.
I like the duck.
So another one within the managing schedules, developmentally appropriate. We'll move to some other, but there's one last one there. I'm worried about too much screen time.
Yes.
But so much school is on screen. So what do you recommend? I know that schedule thing kind of helps, taking those breaks, but kind of talk about, I think a lot of parents do feel like, they don't want to do screen time or there's too much screen time. But I know when they're on school with screen, that shouldn't be part of screen time. That's bad for you, right? So talk about that a bit.
I would
think
say
they
not
might
all
need some
screen.
help there.
Not all screen time is equal.
Right. Definitely
Okay.
not. Definitely not.
We really try to delineate between creative, productive screen time
Right.
and that kind of more screen time to entertain.
Right.
Because if your kid's like super excited, this is actually a funny story that one of my friends and I were talking about this summer, is like, well, my kid's really excited about writing this story, but I'm worried about the screen time. And it's like, just let them type out their story. If they're like being creative and exciting, yes, and there is something to be said for your eyes getting tired from the screen. And that's a reality and needing to take that break. We all experience, but we know, even as adults, that not all screen time is equal.
Definitely not.
We know that there's productive screen time when we're being creative and engaged with it versus when we're sitting and watching, binging Netflix where it just keeps going because it just keeps going. And so I get it.
Well, you're really defining screen time. You're trying to make sure that and maybe you can put them in 2 categories: screen that's not good for you or it's been too much for you, to those screen times that are really beneficial or helpful. Is that right or not?
I'm hesitant with that because it's kind of everything in moderation concept to it. And so, some kids will get on a game and use it just to play around, while other kids are using it to learn about more engineering skills and other pieces. So once again, that's kind of a hard piece.
It really is. And I
I've
know
seen
some kids are
yeah.
sensitive to screens too, where it just winds them up and they have a hard time winding down.
Right.
And I would say if you have a kid like that who just has that really high sensitivity, that's something to really be in partnership with your teacher about, to see if you can get anything that can be printed out versus here, or even if there's anything where there is wiggle room of is this, for example, I know in kindergarten, 1st grade, we have an end of the day closing circle that's show and tell, kind of just community time, where I've had parents reach out and just say, my kids are done. We are they're toast. They're having a hard time. If it's their show and tell, they're happy to be there. And if not, they don't want to listen to anybody else, which is, of course, very normal. And then there's just that I get that you need that time away. You need that time to wind down. And there are some that are kind of give your kid a break, maybe build them up twice a week so they're at least participating, but
And I think
one
of the things that I've kind of noticed as a challenge, even for myself personally, is that piece of I'll get on a screen and I'll be doing work, but sometimes I'll have something else going in the background, and it really kind of muddles that. And it's something I've been working on. Actually, I've gotten very good at not doing. But
As an adult, kids have
But I'll see kids who will be working on a paper, and then they just have a YouTube video playing on the side.
Oh, on the side, yes.
They're listening to the music. And amazingly enough, I never find those kids to be as productive. I mean, I listen to music as well in the background, but it's that idea of, is 100% of your focus on that one topic? Right. And the idea of multitasking is something that has been blown away and is not a true skill. You're just really good at going ahead and looking at multiple things at the same time.
That's what I'm best
breaking
at.
your attention. Yeah, sure. That's what I've heard too.
They do say that between guys and girls.
People don't like that when you start mentioning it, but it's true. The idea of multitasking is not really there. And if you're able to focus on one thing at a time, your results will be that much better.
Okay, let's go to some questions on how to set up routines and procedures. And this first one is, what are the most important routines and procedures to focus on or have your kids focus on? If you can kind of answer that. Most important ones.
I mean, there's routines and there's kind of just little
skills.
And, I mean, honestly, getting up at the right time and going to sleep at the right time. I mean, if you can work on those
if we want to narrow it down, that's
you want to get to the
really
biggest,
important.
most basic piece. There's a time you get up and you're ready to go and everything's set up so you can start doing work. And then there's a time where you're done and you're going to sleep, whether you're having trouble sleeping or not.
And your screens are away.
Your
hopefully
screens
to
are
help you fall
away.
asleep.
Even your books are away, although we're not that good at our house with books.
Yeah, we sit reading a lot.
But it's that idea of there's a start time where things go and you're moving whether you feel like it or not. And there's a time where you go to sleep and you're sleeping, and that is time to, get ready for the next day whether you want to or not.
I would say as a teacher, I think of routines and procedures of how can I free my students' brain up to do their best learning. And so learning engages, and it's like it takes a lot more brain power to learn something new than to do something that you're used to.
Right.
So I think of a routine or a procedure as like tying your shoes as an example, not for school, but just as like a base example. We don't think anymore how to tie your shoe. We just bend down and we do it. And our brain is free to do lots of other things while we're tying our shoe. So if you take that same idea as to routines and procedures to set up with our kids, what's going to free up your kid's head to do their best learning?
Okay.
So that they can learn this without even having to think about it. Like this is how I submit my work is a ridiculously amazing routine and very important one. And by the way, kids still have a hard time with it, even in person. It does not matter what age they are. They're I would say at least all the way up through the junior high that I've taught and high school. That's a routine that if you can free that out of their brain, so that's not something they're constantly having to think about is nice. Even how to pack a backpack. In kindergarten, it's that's actually something we teach them as a procedure or routine, is how to pack that. So what does that look like at home? Does that look like, is your kid going from one house to the other to do different learning? Some people are going to pods, some people have blended families where they're going to mom and dad's or grandma and grandpa's. What does that look like for them? What is that routine? Does the routine mean when I get to grandma and grandpa's, then I sit my backpack here, I unpack it and I do this thing? Because that's just ingrained in their habit, basically. You're creating habits of mind. And that frees up your brain to learn.
Kind of a place for everything and everything in its place, I think is really important. Because when you're struggling trying to find, a pen or a pencil or where you put your notes last, it's always a struggle to that's that break in the routine that will get you off on the side and not paying attention. Suddenly half a day is gone before it's over. I think another important thing as far as routine and a habit to get into is just doing, I sound like a broken record, to-do lists. I mean,
even learning how to make one.
Yeah, having a consistent to-do list and knowing how to make it and knowing how to check it off. And about 2-3 years ago, I started doing something called bullet journaling, which I've done a lot of. I've done a lot of online stuff for keeping track of things. I've done a lot of, Post-it notes all over the place, carrying things around in my pocket, spending lots of money on the big yearly planners and stuff like that. And I just found that, doing this piece, it's a small notebook that I carry everywhere with me. And there's a very consistent way that I on the weekend, I set it up for the next week. I put all my to-do lists in here. I put some of my shopping list in here. And it's just consistent with me at all the time. So I'm not having to run around and do it. And it works for me. But
It's
once
like
again,
your Bible of routines.
but once again, it's different for every person. And this took me many years, I'm going to say, many years to go and get to the point where it has worked pretty consistently for me.
And I would say, like, at the kindergarten, if I'm breaking that all the way down to littles, like, do you come give mom a high five when you're done watching your video?
Right.
Do you know, like what's that routine so that the kid understands they've finished, mom sees that it's done, but it's also developing that independence?
Right.
You know, or do I like move a tile so that I know that this is done to help keep track of whatever it is?
So another question comes out of the space where the kids actually do their work. So this one says, how do I encourage the use of workspace when my student prefers the recliner with a cozy blanket? So kind of addressing that. We talked about that in the videos too, but is it picking your battles, or how do you deal with the cozy blanket, easy chair?
I don't see that as a picking your battle. I see that as an earned privilege that kids can have. And like, for example, in the classroom, kids are always wanting to choose their own space and where they sit. And as a teacher, there's a lot of like, you earn that by showing me that you can get your work done here first, you know, showing me that you can get this. And it could be like, okay, your first earned privilege is the blanket. I like to wear a blanket around my house. All my friends know that. It's kind of a skirt, actually, that just stays with me all day.
All right.
But it could be like, okay, first, like, let's see how you can do it. Can you do it? Here's a blanket. But privileges can also be taken away if they're not submitting their work or if they're not doing these things. And I think the other thing as a teacher that I work really hard to do is earning privileges that aren't like candy or like these things that I have to go out and spend my money on or prove like they're not earning money or they're not earning like these things, because that's a lot of headache.
They're earning responsibility.
They're earning their responsibility and showing that they can be responsible. Right. And if they can show they're responsible, sit on the couch. Get your work done that way.
Give
Absolutely.
them the cozy blanket. All right.
Move yourself around.
I think part of that also, I mean, it kind of goes to the routine piece, that it takes a long time to do a routine. And you have to be consistent with it to build it up before you find whether it honestly works for you or not. And a lot of times I'll do something where I'm like, this is not working for me. But I will dedicate a week to 2 weeks that I'm going to do it no matter what, and this is what it's going to happen, whether I think it's useless or not. And at the end of 2 weeks or whatever, if it's useless, then I'm going to scrap it and try to find something different.
Oh, right.
But I'm willing to give it a try. And part of that is testing to make sure if it works. I mean, the kid might be claiming, I work so much better when I'm working on the recliner. Okay, well, let's try the more traditional way of sitting at the table. Does that work for you if you've really tried it that amount of time? And after 2 weeks, instead of throwing your hands up and going, you're there. And then you also have a base, and the student has a base for, this is what I am in a most productive way at this location. And then give it a try. If they go back and they start doing the recliner and they earn that privilege to do it, do their grades start dropping? Do they stop going ahead and getting materials done that they should? And then it's one of those pieces of, oh, we've changed something here and it appears that the recliner isn't the best place for you. Let's go back until we can see if that's the issue again, back at the table.
Next one is, you mentioned that it takes 6 weeks for students to get into a routine. That was in the videos. And what are the main ways you can see that they're on track to kind of get to that 6 weeks of those routines? What are some ways to kind of measure that along the way? It's really only a couple weeks into it.
Oh my goodness.
It definitely is.
When I realized the other day that it was 7 days, this is the day that I yelled at my daughter, and I realized it's been 7 days. Of course she doesn't know like this, that, or the other thing. I mean, we all get that impatient feeling. And so, it feels like it's been a month. I'm sure that all families feel that way. It's been a month already.
When I heard you say that 6 week thing, it felt a little bit like when I remember coaching my wife going through the labor pains. Is like if you really kind of spread it or count it out, it just helps the pain right now, of what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only met with my students 3 times because of the way that our schedule goes, so it's probably going to take a little bit more. But then again, they're also high school students.
So routine.
For me, routine, when the routine is working, is where you don't have to think about the routine anymore.
Oh, right. Honesty. It's like the tying the shoe.
It becomes natural. You start doing something like, why did I do that in the first place?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, because I keep doing it, and that's what I do now.
Yeah, and I think those routines also, so to know that you're on track would be like depending on the age of your kid, of course. So if I'm talking about elementary, K through the 5 range, in kindergarten, that would mean they know that like when this timer rings, because they may not be able to tell time yet, they may not know their numbers. I mean, Kate's learning all sorts of new stuff right now, which makes things different. They know that they need to sit down and click the link to log in, you know, and if they know how to find the link, if they know that the timer means they have to sit down and do it, I'd say at this point in 9 days in, that's like huge, huge. You know, and if the other thing in that range, the K through 1 range, is like if they can log themselves in with their own numbers and their own password by now, that's a huge milestone leap. I would say for a kindergartner, that might take longer, of course, because they're still learning the numbers. For a 4th, 5th grader, I would say, like, do they know where to find their things right now? That would be like where tangible. Like, can they find do they know where they're supposed to find their stuff? Do they know, is there a place where it's written down, or that they know what time they're supposed to be on for their classes that are on demand? I guess in Peninsula it's live and on demand, but the bigger word for that is synchronous, asynchronous. Like, do they know what that looks like? Do they know how to submit their assignment? Those pieces there would be where we're on track for the routine at this point. I would say 2 weeks from now, I would hope that they know how to submit an assignment. I would hope that they would know, like 2 weeks from now, how to ask their teacher for questions and to leave mom and dad alone. In K1, that might be a little different because they can't type yet. They don't know how to like type and send a message to a teacher in a chat box. Actually, that's not true. I have some 1st graders who know how to type very well.
It varies on according to age what those marks are. So it kind of varies, but I think we can. Let's see. That's kind of that section of the questions. Let's move to the next one. So the third topic is coaching, how to coach. And so the first question kind of relates to what we were just talking about. What are some tips to coach my child to be on task? And it's also that measuring, oh, wow, are they or aren't they? And how do you, and that check-in thing that you've talked about before, what's your tips on that? Keeping your kids on task.
I think that goes back to our time. Honestly, we use the timer so much.
The timer and a checklist.
Timers and checklist,
Sometimes at a younger age, you need to use, have a checklist that has pictures on it and
we did
other
that
things.
for morning routine.
Yeah, for morning routine. But it's that piece where when the student or the kid or your child has done what they need to do, they're actually physically making a mark or putting a little token at one place to another, or it's that kind of feedback that they're like, I did this, it's done, on to the next piece down the line.
And there's also something to be said for acknowledging it. I think as a teacher, I'm way better at acknowledging it than as a parent. And that's I noticed you did this today. And that kind of also goes to like, how do you know you're on track for routines and procedures and things like that, is even helping them see what they can do independently is really a big deal.
I think it's kind of one of those things that at the start of it, it's very much like, you need to do this. And then after it's like, what should you be doing?
I noticed you did.
Yeah, and then I noticed you did that.
Good job.
And then it will lead into it basically being, the tying of the shoes, and you can go on to bigger and better things.
Yep.
Well, that kind of answers this next question is, how do I support my child to take responsibility for their learning? What does that look like? And that's what you're saying. That's what it looks like. It's encouragements along the way and helping them to take that responsibility.
And recognizing that a couple, weeks down the line, after things have been going perfectly on the rails, that suddenly everything will fall apart again, and that's where you go ahead and go, oh, we're all human beings, let's go back.
Let's restart somehow.
Restart again a little bit.
I would say a big win for us on that was just we intentionally, like that question about checking our kids' work, we intentionally went in and said, we will check your work every day. And we got to the point on Friday where we were asked, will you please check my work? So that I can. That's
Look
like
at
that's a nice flip of like, I'd like you to do it.
Now we have them upset when we're not checking it.
I know, it's like, actually I'm really tired right now.
I asked you to check this and it's almost bedtime and you said you would check it. And
I know.
Hey, how many have been there too,
oh my goodness.
right? So.
Then it's like, we are so tired right now that if we check this, it won't even make a difference.
Did we check this?
But let's go to sleep and we'll restart tomorrow. Let's do that.
Yeah, we still have to check his work, actually.
Yes. Oh, you do? Yeah, see?
Yes, we still have to. It's like,
They'll be going home
more
to do
things that we
that.
had to do.
So this next one, my child has an IEP. Remind us of what that is.
That's a great question. IEP is Individualized Education Plan.
Yep. And so how can I coach them when their needs are so different from other children within that?
I would say, I feel like if you're somebody with an IEP
Yeah,
kid, you've been working in tandem a lot,
Right.
which is good, but you have something to say before I will.
Well, I mean, I think it really depends upon the age group, hopefully about where you're going, and
Yeah.
honestly how severe the IEP is needed. A lot of the IEPs that I see as an educator are generally give the student more time to work on their assignments, explain, be willing to answer more questions on a case-by-case basis what they should be doing, provide a checklist for the skills the student should be able to perform. And a lot of them are, I mean, for me personally, they're just good teaching. So I integrate it in for almost all my students. But it's that piece of, they're in there because we want to make sure that we're doing best teaching for all the students as we go into it. For the ones that are more deeper and are more severe, I think that those are probably ones you've already worked with the teacher, and they will probably have a specialist who's working with that student as well.
And I would talk
and
to
that's when
them.
you should start reaching
Yeah.
with them and start providing those, because they'll know the special needs and the special developmental pieces that student should be at to provide help for you.
Yeah.
But if your student has an IEP, and depending on how much they use it, once again, talk with the teacher. Hopefully you've had or even past teachers reach out to them in times like this.
Yeah.
And then just say, well, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, once again, step up that, and I'm not going to go ahead and give you quite as much loose freedom to do your stuff. I'm going to go ahead and hold you a little bit more accountable as we go through this. And
Yeah, I remember you in the video saying you're going to need the teacher's phone number.
Basically, or their email.
Or their
Or
email.
email.
I mean,
Or
I
through
won't-
their
I don't
LMS,
answer phones
one of the
anymore.
two.
In your emails. Yeah.
I answer
so,
phones.
look at that. So, I just think that connection you have with the teacher is going to be helpful in that.
And the name IEP, individualized, makes this a really hard question to answer.
Right.
Because,
Right.
and I mean, children are all different, but if you have a child with an IEP, they have also specialized needs, like Doss was saying, that really working hard with that teacher. If they have an IEP, they don't just have a classroom teacher. They have a wide, huge support group there, and that would be. My biggest would just be reach out to them.
Right.
Them.
Reach
And
out to
make
the
sure-
resources. There's a lot of
Yep.
resources out there.
Having them on
Yep.
in your email addresses.
Yeah. And also just being really in communication with the teacher, the classroom teacher. I had a whole new group of kids, and I was so overwhelmed that I had forgotten to schedule a meeting with this IEP family, this family who had an IEP, and they reached out and they just said, "Hey, can we?" And that was so good because I would have, hated to have not had the time to do that
Right.
and missed something really important for
Right,
this
right.
child, and so being able to work in tandem with the parent as a team, with the IEP team, with all of the people to make sure that they're supported is really helpful. And just being really honest with what you can and can't do as a parent and just what's working and what's not.
We've in the years we've seen a whole lot, so there's not really going to be anything that's going to surprise us at all.
Yeah.
And we, because of our job, we have the responsibility and the privilege to know a lot about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So unless you feel like it's personal, very personal information that hasn't been shared, and there's reasons for that, being honest with the teachers is really helpful. One of the common things that I'll work with parents is I'll have them fill out a little piece, or I'll talk with them directly, and especially during conferences. My one question is, what do you want me to know about your child?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And starting that conversation, having that piece, really is really helpful. I mean, my child has problems with anxiety. Okay, great. That helps me at least give a piece of when something's going wrong, where are we with this student?
Yeah.
This one is, I know, going to be for most everybody. They go on a break of some kind. Maybe it's lunch break. It's some kind of a break that's in the schedule and everything. But then at school, they have the peer pressure to kind of get back and get
Positive
into
peer
it.
pressure.
Yes.
Not the negative.
But they don't have that at home. So this question is really, what is the best way to regain readiness to learn after lunch is what this says. But it can be any of those breaks. How do those coaches out there do that? What are some tips?
Well, I would say first off, you're not alone.
Yeah.
As teachers, we know that the time after lunch is the hardest to engage. You can have the same class, same group of kids in the morning. I'm thinking about middle school right now, that you had in the afternoon, and it's a very different group of kids because of where they're at. And my afternoon classes, therefore, were always more active than my morning classes. You know, like as a teacher, I always try to save the best for last. So like right now with I think I said at the end of the day, it's always show and tell, because that's the most fun thing, and the kids are happy to talk about themselves because they're their favorite person. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It just, we are all ourselves favorite person sometimes. And so even as a parent, if you have the ability of like working on the stuff that you know will be the most challenging for your child at the beginning of the day and saving the more fun things.
Dangling the carrot.
Yeah, I mean,
or the candy.
Always. Well, I mean, I never do candy, but
I know. Okay, all right.
But dangling the fun stuff. So if you know they have a lot of fun with their writing, like they love writing, but math is just like pulling teeth, then it's like, okay, let's do the math first so that you have something to look forward to at the end.
So that might change from day to day for a child, but that takes extra work, obviously.
Yeah,
but it can be helpful. Like you're doing something different this day. It's more like a river instead of everything the same.
I think another piece is, and this is kind of hard, I mean, it might seem unfair, but try to make sure the lunches aren't super fun. I mean,
how do you make boring lunches?
if I'm going to go out, I mean, if I think from my personal piece, if I'm going to go out and I'm going to take, I mean, it's the middle of the day, I'm not going to go for a big bike ride and go out in the out in the woods, and I'm not going to go ahead and and have a wonderful time and a massage and then go ahead and watch a movie and then expect me to come back to work and really want to be there.
So there's the creativity. Try to make lunch boring.
Try to have a goal for it. I mean, try to have it's
what is it going to be at the end?
If you can think of it, if they can take care of some of those chores and some of those things that they should have taken care of or might need to take care of, then have that done then.
Yeah.
And
good tips.
Or it's like, oh man, I'm so sad that you're choosing not to work, but you can't do this because this isn't done yet.
Right.
So I guess all you have is just, you can sit in the corner and look at a book if you want.
Okay.
All right. But when you're ready to make a different choice, we're there. I mean, some of those are just normal parenting tips, but
I mean, they're playing they were playing the Nintendo Switch for the last half hour of lunch.
They're not
going to want to come back.
That's right.
But another thing is this is kind of depends on the student. Get them to go out for a run or a walk or something that's physically active. A lot of times they just need to get some wiggles out halfway through.
Lunch/PE.
Yeah. I mean, we usually pair lunch and recess together in elementary. Just something that they just move, but not so fun that they never want to come back.
In this, you talked about something called Digital Village you wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And so in the coach element here, you might address some of these issues when it comes to some of these issues, Digital Village and what that means.
Yeah. Digital Village basically means is you call in all the favors and all the friends and all the family you possibly can.
That are even potentially in the same place as you.
Yeah.
Like their kids could also be learning at home.
And try to get support. I mean, for our son, one of the main reasons that we finally broke down and got him an iPad about a year ago?
Not even a year ago, honey. It was during,
6 months we finally got it for him, and the main reason we got it for him was he's able to FaceTime with his cousins and his grandparents. So we've got it set up on the kids' chat or something like that, so it's locked down. But that's his piece where if he needs help or he has a question sometimes, he'll call his grandparents and ask them.
Or if it's that, like, again, that math that they just really hate, or reading because they don't want to, like, sit down and decode, calling up grandma and grandpa and saying, like, I'd like to read to you today. Or, and again, like, I do so much with, like, earned responsibilities. Like, if you can do this for me today, tomorrow you can call your grandparents and you can read to them on the iPad. So it's kind of that, like, use a multi-tiered step, but
we can do it these days, so that's a great idea. I mean, it takes a village as that idea, and then do that digitally with your school day. So,
or even set up, I think right now, especially because there are some families in quarantine or some that are too far away to actually have a play date in the middle of the day. Just set up like, hey, can they chat with each other for like can we set up a time so my kid knows they're working for this 10 minutes, and then at this time can they chat for 5? And then go back to work. So that like 5-minute break, almost a celebration of finishing a work.
So the coaching, then you pull other people into the coaching of coaching your kids well. So that's a great idea. So let's move to this last one where, we've got lots of questions. This is great. So the last subject is productive struggle.
Oh my goodness.
And why that's good. The question within that one is, what are some phrases I can use to help my child work through that struggle stuff? Some phrases, some words that you think they're wanting some words and phrases maybe to say, well, this is productive. I know we're struggling, but it's productive.
I've got two that are kind of,
All right.
there's a lot of phrases we'll use, but I taught next to a special needs classroom, a self-contained special needs classroom for about the first 7 to 8 years that I was teaching. And the teacher there was just amazing. What she got out of those students and how she prepared them with their limited, with some of the limitations they had. But one of the things she had written on her wall in really big letters that I thought was amazing, and I still use to this day, is reading is hard and hard is necessary. And it was this idea that, yeah, things are going to be a challenge to you, especially, you know, if you're in a special needs classroom, but those things are necessary for you to be successful later on. And the students that came into the class, a lot of times they would come in my class because I had computers and they would work. And they would be the type who would turn in an assignment 2 months late. But that's an assignment they've been working on for literally 2 months because they'd happened to find it when I was handing it out and I didn't know I'd handed it to them. But they'd finished it. And honestly, because they were willing to actually finish and turn a work in, sometimes they had higher grades than students who were fully able in my class. But it's that piece of that perseverance and that willingness to move forward. And it's not easy. I mean, I think accepting that fact and recognizing that fact is a really strong thing to be able to do.
Well, that kind of leads into this next one, is how do I know when my child is in a productive struggle versus this over-the-top, just frustrated? And that may be the crying moment, but crying can be a part of positive too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel like
So much the kid.
It depends on the kid. We have one kid, well, actually both of our kids kind of can be teary.
Yeah.
A little more than, and maybe sometimes we push them a little too hard too.
All to be
as parents.
not named here.
Yeah.
But I know them.
Yes. I feel like there's a point where, like, can they literally not do it at all?
Yeah.
I know.
Because, you know, it, like, kind of
They
going back to that
I think
productive
it's the-
struggle
I think
of
it's-
finding
yeah,
the
and I think
weight
it's
that
the-
you can
I
actually
think it's
lift.
the detective kind of piece.
Yeah.
One of my favorite phrases working with the students when they're like, I can't do this is, well, if you could do it, what is the first thing you would do?
Yeah.
Oh,
if you could, where would you start?
You're breaking it
Yeah.
down to steps then. And
Yeah, or if you were this person, like who do you think the smartest mathematician is? Like, oh, this person. Well, if you were them,
Okay.
what might you do?
You're
with that?
pretending.
Like, you know,
You're
kind
acting
of,
a part.
Yeah, acting a part, or even, but there's a point where, like, you know, you've pushed them too far, and you know, like, physically, right? If you're coaching.
Right.
You know that, like, you've pushed your body too far when you pull a ligament, or like you pull something, or you've got shin splints now all of a sudden.
Well,
and
but with that, I mean, I think the students there's kids at different ages too of what they are willing to both mentally and physically be able to take care of.
to do.
I mean, there's some. I mean, I need to be careful because I will hurt myself when I'm working out because I just don't mind
care.
it and I don't
Yeah.
care. And as a result, I have to actually learn how to hold myself back. And you'll have students who are the same way, that they will pound their head repeatedly against a problem way long when they should have just stopped and taken a break or actually gone in a different angle for it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, where
Flexibility is that.
Right,
thing.
and then there's other
It's-
people with very low pain tolerance, and as soon
Yeah.
as it hurts, it's like, okay, well, I tried a little bit, now I need to stop. And the same thing with kind of the learning piece. So it's kind of that one thing of knowing your child, and also when they are hitting that, being there to provide the scaffolding before they do. And I'm not a big fan of just looking at a kid and going, well, it stinks to be you. You probably should go ahead and just keep on working until you start crying, and then I'll help you.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing is sometimes I think us parents start to become kids when we're frustrated.
Right.
And we kind of need to
Lose
grow
our
up
own grit.
ourselves.
Yes, we
right?
do, absolutely.
Well, and also I think there's a difference between going ahead and going to the point where you start helping, you start asking the questions and guiding the student.
Right.
Versus doing it for
versus
them.
going ahead and doing it for them.
Or just
and this
getting
is-
mad at them.
And we've mentioned it before.
Or
I
just
mean,
getting,
right.
sometimes
Yeah.
this is about, like, where we are as parents versus where kids are in their abilities. For example, with my daughter, when I made her cry the other day, that was really where I was in my own soul at that
Wasn't her,
moment.
right.
Had nothing to do with my daughter's ability.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Maybe
in this one, I don't understand the work. Like they're saying, I don't understand the work, so how can I help my child? How would you answer that question? Because that is true, like, you know, and I think one of you had said, a parent came to you and said, one of the parents for you as a teacher said, you're showing me, my kids are seeing now how little I know.
Yes.
And
Which is
I
really
don't thank you
humiliating,
for that. And so that whole piece, I don't understand the assignment. How can I help my child?
Yeah. I think there's a difference between understanding the assignment and being able to do the work for what it is to a degree. I think part of the thing is, and I'll admit fully, there's a lot of times when we're doing more exploratory stuff with the students, I don't know how they're doing it.
Right.
My job as a teacher a lot of times, especially for the higher level programming stuff, is if they're doing a specialty or a special project, they're getting into libraries and function calls that I haven't even gone into because I haven't had a reason to. And my response usually is, once again, well, if you did know how to do it, where would you go? And it's much more a lot of that kind of scaffolding and building up and having them explain it to me as they go along.
Yeah.
And in that situation, a lot of times I'm taking the part of the duck.
Well, and I
having
think
them explain it to
too,
me.
I feel like as parents and as parents, we feel like we do need to know the answers. As a teacher, when I'm in my teacher role, I
Right.
know I don't know all the answers, and I will freely admit that to my students on a regular basis. It's like, I don't know. Where would we go to find that? That's a great question. Like, who knows where we would look for this? Kind of like he
Right.
was saying.
Sometimes when I even know the answer,
Yeah.
I tell them I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean-
I know it's great because they don't really actually know what we. They don't know when we're bluffing, but a lot of our job as a teacher and as a parent is to teach our kids where to look for the answers.
That's the coach idea.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's
It's
more
not
like
providing the right answer, it's providing them the skills to get to the right answer.
yeah. I mean, there's like, would you look on Google? How do you know that this YouTuber is actually accurate? Like,
Right.
how do we find a good source? Like, I can help you
Right.
find a source. Or is this the time to call in the teacher and say, like, teacher, we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing is having that teacher's email in your phone is going to be helpful because you can ask them. Now, you tell me, and they may be wondering, in this time, is it harder for teachers, the online piece, or is it easier than having kids in, do you have more time to answer those kind of questions?
So you're saying like with extra time to be able to
extra
help
time
and
to
answer.
help these. Or is it worse? Like you get a lot of questions.
It's twofold. Number one, I'm in front of a computer pretty much all day long. So in my breaks, or even when I have a short piece, I have my email open in another window, and I'm constantly firing off emails and taking care of small little stuff. Because I know if I don't do that really quick, then it's either going to be a problem then, or I'm going to have to go and spend an hour or more after class
catching up
to that
right.
So in that way, you'll probably get a lot faster response from me if you email me now than if you would if you emailed me
later.
year.
Yeah.
With that being said, I'm juggling plates all over the place right now. I'm easily putting in a lot more effort and I have less time to breathe. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, but I just think that avenue of the email to ask questions is good, and they'll get to it when they can, though, right?
I would say so. I know that I feel like my mindset has to shift. I am now the parents coach, I guess, as well. I'm a teacher, but I'm also coaching parents to help them through what it looks like to support their own kids. And so when I think of it that way, if I have a parent who like there's a technical question of like, how do we do this? And then there's a bigger question of my kid won't do this. Or there's the question of, I think that we've pushed our kid too far with that frustration.
Right.
They're done. What do we do? And I would answer all of those differently, but I think Doss is right. We're in front of the computer. So at this point, I see that as a part of my teaching right now is communicating with the parent and saying, hey, this is the technical answer. This is this is this.
And with both the parents and the teacher, both the parents and the students, I'll tell them, I can go ahead and you can bother me right now, or send something to me right now, and it'll take me 2-3 minutes to answer. Or you can not answer it, and then we can go ahead and in 2 weeks when it finally happens and everything falls apart, everybody will be spending days trying to go ahead and fix and get you caught up where you should have been. So it's kind of a stitching time concept.
Well, that kind of speaks to what the reason that you came and said we'd like to support these parents with this, with the videos, with the question and answer time. It just fits into what you just said. You're really wanting to help, and so I won't give your email address, but I think what's good is that you know your teacher's email address to just communicate with them, talk to them. If you have questions, ask them, and that's what they're saying basically.
Absolutely, and I would really highly suggest that, like, as parents are asking us questions, that they're also supporting and encouraging their kids to learn how to do the same of us.
Right.
Because this is a weird platform, and
it is.
Parents didn't grow up with this as a platform, and so we're all learning it together, and that is unnerving for parents. But even just saying, like, if I can email, is this accessible for my student? Can they do that through their LMS, their learning management system, Schoology, Google Classroom? How can I support them so that they're also funneling questions that way?
I mean, they can do it. My son missed a meeting because he couldn't get on for some reason. And I just said, well, you need to go ahead and message your teacher and tell her.
Yeah,
And
and
Well,
showing
there's
that
a
that's a routine and a procedure that I think in another week or two, if your kids can't do that and they're still coming to you, then that to me is a lifesaver for us as parents, because then he knows how to do that, but also for the teachers, so they're actually communicating directly to the kid.
To the
and
kid.
knowing how to work that through.
Well, we have one last question that actually kind of wraps things up really well. How do I, parent, develop a relationship with my child to allow for productive struggle? And I don't know, that's one that all three of us really can answer. I mean, as a parent, now my kids are adult kids. It really takes time it took time that I took with each of my daughters, spending individual time with them to know who they are. A lot of parents, especially can be dads, just kind of don't develop that relationship and know their child very well. I really took time to do that. But what are your thoughts on developing relationships which really allow you to know what productive struggle looks like for each of your kids?
Yeah. I think that's a big question.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I think one of the things, I think one of the things, I mean,
like,
kind of
let's
is,
find some parenting books.
it's a question. I mean, I think one of the questions that I have as a parent all the time is, when my kid gets to a certain age, either, as a junior high student or a high school student or leaving the home, what do I want them to be able to do? What
Right.
does it look like they are able to do? And then how can I start right now to provide them the skills that they need to get there? And one of the things I use with my kids constantly is, usually when they're getting in trouble, is you are not the boss right now. Someday you will be your own boss, though. And I want to make sure that you make the best decisions and you learn how to make the best decisions so that you're a good boss for yourself when you get that responsibility.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes to that whole scaffolding thing of, recognizing when they are getting where they need to be, and then how can you support them to get to that farther piece.
Yeah.
And that's developmental and trial and error and individual student or individual kid.
Constantly just thinking about how or if you're communicating with your kids.
And you get through your day, your schedule. I think you both have also talked about family time. And that's really actually what this question I think is saying is, like, once you get through your school day schedule, it's really important that you take some family time and individuals within family with each of you. And that's where you develop just strong relationships with your kids. And a lot of parents maybe don't have the time to do that, but it really is important so they know each kid well, and you develop strong relationships with each one.
Something that we just started, which hopefully will keep going. I know our son looks forward
We'll
to it
doing
like
it
crazy, because he
crazy
will never let us
forces
stop.
to,
But we started actually doing date night with them.
Yes.
And it's like we can't do it once a month. That's just not or once a week. That's not sustainable for us. But once a month, we'll change who gets which kid. So he might get our son, and I might get our daughter. And we'll just go spend like an hour or two doing something with them. I mean, we'll try to make it fun and special.
Usually go to dinner or something.
Yeah,
like that.
and
grab some food to eat out somewhere.
And it means something. I as I've been looking at this, it's like it's dedicated time to just them, where I can ask. Like, I work really hard. It's so hard, I think, as an adult to put our phone away. But to put that away and to just really let them run the show of
even if you end up going to McDonald's.
Even if I end up going to McDonald's for dinner,
it's
favorite,
I take
this is what you wanted to do, and we're going to listen to that.
Honor that.
We're going to honor that, and or we're going to play
sure
dolls today. And it's really good. I mean, my daughter now wants to play with me all the time, which is really good, but I'm so tired sometimes. And so I have to
You're
set
not
up
alone.
play dates
Yes.
with her.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm going
Play
to work
dates
really
with
hard
mom
today.
or
Play date. We'll
dad.
have a play date tomorrow
Yeah.
at like this time.
Well, I think that's a great one to end on. I mean, if you have other questions, actually, put them in the post there, and we'll make sure that each of those gets answered. But or will we?
Yeah,
But
we'll do our best with
Send
all
it
of
through
our
my email box.
Yeah.
yeah, so we will make sure all of those are answered. But that's a great one to end on, just that you develop relationships with each of your kids is, I mean, aside from school, that's the biggest thing. And when we talk about faith and when we talk about school, that's still the most important thing, that you're building relationships with each of your kids, because that's what God wants to do in their lives as well. So we're going to end this. It's just been slightly over an hour. We thought maybe it's going to be a half hour, so I think we're going to close this. But what I want to say is the next thing that's coming up for you. And so we have Lauren Tratine Spencer, who is here at the church, that said, similar to Tami and Doss said, I want to help parents. And so she's a marriage and family counselor that wants to do a live in-person time here at Chapel Hill Church on October 21st from 6:30 to 8:30, in-person time in the Memorial Chapel, where the topic is parenting in a pandemic. And she's going to talk about the survival guide to coping and comforting during COVID-19. And she has noticed just this uptick in, and we've talked about this too, just an uptick in stress and anxiety. And she actually has her master's in OCD and anxiety counseling. And she's a Christian, she's an Army wife, she's a dog mom, she's a lifestyle blogger and fellow COVID pandemic survivor. And she wants to just help parents work through kind of not just the physical things, but the emotional things. You have your school day, but then that brings all kinds of emotional things along. So her topics are connection time, which we just kind of ended with, talking a little bit about that. Let's talk stressors, coping for kids, and then coping for you as adults, warning signs, and then kind of next steps and now what. So set your calendars for Wednesday, October 21st, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. here in person at Chapel Hill. We will have you actually sign up, because there's kids program during that, and we need to know how many kids, we need to know how many people to have the room space for that. So parenting in a pandemic, set your calendar for that. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.